Today we're steering our ship, hopefully filled with cocktail mixers, straight into one of the Great Lakes' most mysterious and dangerous areas, the Michigan Triangle. Like its infamous Atlantic cousin, this triangle has a reputation for swallowing ships, planes, and even people without a trace. But this isn't just about disappearances. Strange weather patterns, eerie lights, and bizarre time slips have turned this watery vortex into a hotspot for legends and speculation. Is it the work of natural forces, a glitch in time and space, or something far more mysterious? Grab this week's cocktail, check out the description box for the recipe, settle in, and join us as we uncover the secrets lurking beneath the surface of Lake Michigan. Welcome to Capers and Cocktails, a true crime podcast that doesn't take itself too seriously and gives you something to enjoy while you listen. The following content may be disturbing to some. Discretion is advised. If you're enjoying one of our themed cocktails, ensure you're of legal drinking age and have fun, but drink responsibly. Lake Michigan is one of North America's Great Lakes, and it's actually the only one located entirely within the United States. Fun fact, it's nearly 22,400 square miles large, and it's the second largest Great Lake by volume and the third largest by surface area. It's bordered by 4 states, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, and Wisconsin, and has long been a hub of commerce, recreation, and natural beauty. Its sandy shores, often called the Third Coast, feature stunning dunes and vibrant beaches, while its water serves as a critical route for shipping and a source of fresh water for millions. If you've been to, or live in, Chicago, you know the delicious taste of Lake Michigan's water firsthand. How nice. End of episode. Just kidding. It sort of seems like anytime you get a big body of water or a large area of forest, something unpopulated, you end up with death. Sometimes, however, some people argue that there are areas within bodies of water that see a little more death and other mysterious happenings than others, and they're often shaped like triangles. Most people know about the Bermuda Triangle, marked by points in Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico. It is infamous for the mysterious disappearances of ships, planes, and people. Then there's the Dragon's Triangle, which is located near Japan. This area in the Pacific Ocean is infamous for lost ships, strange weather, and mysterious phenomena, and is often compared to the Bermuda Triangle. We can't forget about the Bennington Triangle from, I think, season 1 of Capers and Cocktails when it was Margs and Mayhem, several years ago. Nestled in Vermont, this area is notorious for a series of mysterious disappearances in the mid-20th century, alongside eerie legends and ghostly reports. And now back to Lake Michigan, and specifically the triangle that's made over the lake when you connect the points of Ludington, Michigan, Benton Harbor, Michigan, and Manitowoc, Wisconsin. Yes, Making a Murderer fans, that Manitowoc, Wisconsin. It might be worth mentioning that some have debated the shape and range of the triangle, with some people saying that it's not a triangle at all, but basically the entire lake. So, what happened? I'm glad you asked, my little cocktail conspirators, but there's no time for that now. We have to drink. Oh, before I forget, we've phased out our Twitter/X or whatever account and have moved to Threads and Blue Sky. If you want to help by following those accounts, you'd be a real one. Twitter has turned massively unfun recently. Yeah, I think you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. If you're on Threads or Blue Sky, follow me. If you haven't heard of Threads or Blue Sky, well, me neither until very recently. But back to drinking. Can't be Capers and Cocktails without the cocktail, or mocktail. When Jerome Adams started bartending at Bayview Yacht Club in Detroit, Michigan in 1967, he wasn't trying to create a global sensation. He just wanted to honor the legacy of Curtis Hicks, the bartender who'd served Bayview for nearly 3 decades. But when he whipped up a creamy cocktail with coffee liqueur, rum, and ice cream, a fellow bartender took a sip and quipped, "This thing really hums." The name stuck, and the Hummer was born. Jerome's Hummer cocktail took on a life of its own thanks to Bayview's adventurous members, spreading the word far and wide. Pre-internet, excited bartenders from California to France had to call Detroit for the recipe. Over time, tweaks to the original recipe, like swapping ice cream for cream, stirred up some controversy, with others trying to claim credit for the drink. Jerome stuck to his story, recalling how he made adjustments simply to keep costs down in the era of 75-cent cocktails. Now Bayview's bar is ready for any crowd with heavy-duty blenders, and Jerome himself travels to events to mix his legendary drink. With a smile, he says, quote, "I never thought it'd be this big," end quote. Grab the recipe from the description box, whip up your own cocktail or mocktail version, and drink up like you're sailing on a yacht. But do yourself a favor and stay far away from the triangle. Okay, all right, we're pretty far in this episode, and you know all about a cocktail and a little about a few other triangles, but now I have to tell you about why you have to stay away from the Michigan Triangle specifically. The exact origins of the term Lake Michigan Triangle are unknown. Some of these incidents were first covered in Jay Gourley's 1977 book about what he termed the Great Lakes Triangle, but later authors zoomed in on the Lake Michigan portion. Ludington, Michigan is the northern tip, Bennington Harbor, Michigan is the southern tip, and Manitowoc, Wisconsin is the western tip. And weird stuff has been happening in the triangle for over 300 years. Le Griffin, a French sailing vessel built by the guy with the longest name ever, get ready, René Robert Cavelier Sieur de la Salle, that's it, set sail on its maiden voyage in 1679. Le Griffin was the first full-size sailing ship of the upper Great Lakes of North America. It weighed 45 tons and had 3 masts and 7 cannons. La Salle and Father Louis Hennepin set out on Le Griffin's maiden voyage on August 7, 1679, with a crew of 32 souls. They traveled westward from Niagara, which is near modern-day Lewiston, New York, through Lake Erie, the Detroit River, and Lake Huron, and finally into Lake Michigan. These were waters that had only before been traveled on by canoe. The ship's destination was Green Bay, Wisconsin, where it was to establish French trade with indigenous tribes. After navigating the waters of Lake Michigan and reaching Green Bay, the ship was loaded up with a valuable cargo of furs for its return journey to Niagara. René, longest name ever, disembarked, but with high hopes for the ship's success, seeing it as a key to building French trade in the area. However, as Le Griffin departed Green Bay without René, longest name ever, on board on September 18, 1679, and headed into open waters, it vanished without a trace. People have been guessing and debating what happened to the ship for centuries. Some believe a violent storm claimed the vessel. Others suggested the crew mutinied, killed their commander, and scuttled the ship to hide their crime. That means they sunk it. Some believed that the Ottawas or Potawatomis might have boarded the ship, killed the crew, and set it on fire. René, longest name ever, himself suggested that the crew sunk the ship on purpose, scuttled it, grabbing the furs first to sell for fun and profit. Despite modern sonar searches and historical investigations, the wreckage of the Le Griffin has never been definitively found, and there is no substantial evidence for any theory. It is believed that Le Griffin sank in a part of Lake Michigan with a limestone substrate. That area is only around 80 feet deep, which is not very deep. Brendan Bylod, president of the Wisconsin Underwater Archaeology Association, has said, quote, "The waves really move the water, even at 80 feet below. I would not expect any wooden remains from 1679 to remain," end quote. That certainly hasn't stopped people from looking. Le Griffin to this day remains the holy grail of Great Lakes shipwreck hunters, but has yet to be found and positively identified. Over 200 years later, on May 21, 1891, 2 schooners, the Thomas Hume and the Rouse Simmons, departed from Chicago after delivering a shipment of lumber. Both were supposed to head back to Muskegon's Hackley Hume lumber mill. But the weather had other plans. When a squall rolled in, the crew of the Rouse Simmons decided to play it safe and return to Chicago to wait out the storm. A squall, if you're not a sailor, is a sudden, intense burst of wind, often accompanied by heavy rain, snow, or thunderstorms. Unlike a steady wind, squalls come in quickly and can cause rough seas and dangerous conditions, especially for ships like schooners and, spoiler alert, airplanes. That's later. On the Great Lakes, squalls are notorious for catching sailors off guard with their rapid development and sheer force, sometimes leading to disaster. So good on the Rouse Simmons for turning around. The Thomas Hume, however, pressed on and vanished without a trace, along with all 6 sailors on board. It was only discovered that the ship had disappeared when 2 days later, the Rouse Simmons sailed again for Muskegon, and the crew expected to see the Thomas Hume tied up along her dock in Muskegon Lake. Hackley Hume dispatched a search vessel and even offered a $300 reward, but the schooner was never found, leaving the mystery of her fate to linger on for centuries. For years, theories about the Thomas Hume's disappearance ran wild. The most common explanation was aliens. Just kidding. It was that the storm overtook and sank her. However, some, including lumber baron Charles Hackley himself, suspected that another ship collided with her and sunk the schooner. Another theory suggested that the captain sailed the ship to a different port, gave it a fresh coat of paint, and then just sailed away. That does not seem likely, but okay. Some believe that a massive steamer collided with the schooner, and the steamer's captain ordered the crew to keep quiet about it. Over a century later, in 2006, the wreck was discovered 150 feet below the surface by an A&T recovery employee searching for a Navy aircraft. Amazingly, the ship was almost perfectly preserved by the cold water. Experts determined that the Thomas Hune had indeed fallen victim to the storm, as her pristine condition ruled out the collision theory. The Rosabelle was a two-masted schooner that carried materials to the House of David in Benton Harbor. But this ship had more drama than a reality TV show. Between 1875 and 1926, it was found capsized not only once, but twice in Lake Michigan, and each time, the crew was nowhere to be found. The first incident was in 1875 when a car ferry spotted the schooner floating upside down. The crew of 10 had disappeared without a trace. And in true capitalistic fashion, the boat was just flipped over, water dumped out, and sent back to Milwaukee, where it went back into service like nothing happened, and 10 people hadn't just straight up disappeared like yesterday's lunch. Fast forward to October 1921, this time the Rosabelle was loaded up with potatoes and maple lumber, ready to set sail. But here's the twist. The captain, Ed Johnson, had a bad feeling about it. His son later said his dad had a premonition something terrible was going to happen. I mean, what could possibly go wrong in a boat that had already capsized once, am I right? Captain Ed refused to board, but the crew sailed off without him. A few days later, the schooner was found capsized again. No crew in sight, and with its stern missing, suggesting a collision. But here's the kicker. No one else reported an accident, and when the Coast Guard dragged the boat into the harbor, they couldn't find any signs of a collision at all. Talk about an unsolved super triangle-like mystery. What happened to the crew? Twice. Okay, so what happens when it's not an entire crew that disappears, but just one member of the crew? Just one. This is the story of another tale from the Michigan Triangle. George R. Donner, born in 1879, was no stranger to the frozen waters of the Great Lakes. He'd been sailing for decades, starting his career at a young age, long before his official start in 1900. For over 10 years, he worked for the Valley Camp Steamship Company as a skipper and a mate, but in 1935, when the company was bought by Columbia Transportation Company, George made the switch. By 1937, after 2 years of no voyages, CTC granted him the rank of captain, and he was given full command of the O.S. McFarland. Great. No experience. Anyway, Captain George was ready for his first official voyage of the season. The ship was scheduled to set sail on April 28, 1937, his 58th birthday. The ship had just loaded 9,800 tons of coal in Erie, Pennsylvania, and was making its way west toward Port Washington, Wisconsin. After hours of navigating through ice floes, Captain George finally retired to his cabin, telling his crew to wake him up when they were close to their destination. 3 hours later, as they neared Port Washington, the second mate went to check on Captain George, but his cabin door was locked from the inside. Thinking maybe he had gone for a snack, he checked the galley, but no luck. The crew then started searching all over, eventually breaking down the door to his cabin, only to find it empty. There was no way he could have gotten out through the portholes, and no signs of any personal issues. They searched the water around the ship, but no one ever found a trace of him. Captain George just vanished, and the mystery still stands. The disappearance of Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 2501 remains one of the most enduring mysteries in aviation history, and it was in the Triangle. On June 23, 1950, the flight, with 55 passengers and 3 crew members aboard, took off from New York's LaGuardia Airport on its way to Minneapolis, with a planned stopover in Seattle. The aircraft, a sturdy DC-4, was piloted by Captain Robert Lind, a seasoned pilot with nearly 900 hours of experience in the DC-4 alone. Because of weather warnings and thunderstorms, Captain Lind requested a lower altitude to avoid turbulent conditions. As the flight progressed over Lake Michigan, the crew unknowingly steered directly into a squall line. Ding ding, squall. Again. By 11:13 p.m., the plane made its final transmission, requesting permission to descend to 2,500 feet. However, due to other air traffic, this request was denied, and shortly afterward, the plane vanished. Local residents reported hearing a low flying plane, followed by seeing a flash of light and a possible explosion over the lake. Despite extensive search efforts by the U.S. Coast Guard and the Navy, only partial wreckage, including human remains, was found. The main wreckage, including the engines, were never recovered, and the cause of the crash remains unknown to this day. The disappearance of Flight 2501 was the largest aviation disaster in world history at that time. Initial investigations suggested a possible mid-air explosion caused by turbulence, while others speculated about mechanical failure or a lightning strike. However, with limited evidence, the true cause of the tragedy remains one of aviation's great mysteries. And we did a whole episode last season on a man who walked right into the Michigan Triangle, Stephen Kubacki. Stephen was a college student who disappeared in 1978 while cross-country skiing near Lake Michigan. He reappeared 15 months later, claiming to have no memory of the time he was missing. And his story has sparked various theories, including amnesia or abduction. Aliens. Who knows? His case remains one of the most mysterious disappearances in the region. Seems like there might be something going on in the triangle you can find in the middle of Lake Michigan. But whether or not this phenomenon is even real is, as you can imagine, debated. Maybe not hotly debated. You've probably never heard of it. But, not everyone agrees on what's going on. The Lake Michigan Shipwreck Research Association, yes, there's a whole association, says the whole triangle idea is just a myth. According to them, there aren't more shipwrecks in the triangle than anywhere else in the Great Lakes. They point out that the number of wrecks across Lake Michigan is really just because of how much traffic passes through Lake Michigan. I'm not a scientist, but there are also a good bit of natural explanations for what may have happened to these poor souls who made the mistake of traveling in or around Lake Michigan. A lot of the shipwrecks and disappearances in Lake Michigan are blamed on its unique wind and wave patterns. Because the lake is long and its shores run parallel without anything to block the water, it creates strong currents like riptides and long shore tides. Plus, the lake's north to south shape, combined with steady wind patterns, can whip up some seriously dangerous, tall waves. Another natural theory behind the disappearances points to magnetic anomalies caused by magnetic declination and deviation. Here we go, sciencey stuff. Declination is the difference between true north and magnetic north, which changes depending on your location around Lake Michigan. It's typically 4 to 5 degrees westward. Deviation happens when a compass is influenced by nearby magnetic fields, like those from metal objects, causing the needle to point at the object instead of magnetic north. While modern navigation systems can handle these quirks, they could easily throw off inexperienced sailors or pilots, especially in challenging conditions. Also, that's modern, and a lot of these shipwrecks happened a long time ago. Now, if you lean more into the paranormal side of things, we've got some theories for you. Some conspiracy theorists blame the triangle on a negative energy vortex. Energy vortexes are said to be places where powerful, sacred energy is concentrated, usually promoting healing and positivity. But some believe negative energy vortexes exist, bringing danger and even malevolent forces. Ley lines, which are thought to connect ancient landmarks, are often tied to these vortexes. Ley lines are, according to those who believe, natural streams of magic. Apparently good and bad magic. Interestingly, ley line maps show one ley line running right through the middle of Lake Michigan. Others think the supposed vortex might be connected to an underwater prehistoric structure discovered in 2007, often called the North American Stonehenge. I'm sorry, what? The North American Stonehenge? Yeah, you heard that. Yep. Now, before you go wild, you archaeologist nerds, it's not really like Stonehenge at all. In 2007, while searching the depths of Lake Michigan for shipwrecks, archaeologists stumbled upon something else completely, a boulder with a prehistoric carving of a mastodon alongside a series of stones arranged in a formation that looked similar to Stonehenge. The formation is a circular pattern nearly 40 feet wide, with an inner ring of stones about 20 feet across. Made entirely of granite, the stones are estimated to be around 10,000 years old, making this the oldest known structure ever found in North America. And even though archaeologists haven't released the exact location of the site, apparently Lake Michigan Triangle experts magically know where it is, and one of those ley lines passing through this site brought along a negative energy vortex, causing all this drama in the Lake Michigan Triangle. Sure. Or, it could definitely probably maybe be aliens. Thanks for hanging out with me. There are lots of theories why people get hung up on triangles, but some theories point to the idea of human pattern recognition. Humans are hardwired to seek patterns. When multiple mysterious events happen near 3 key points, we mentally connect the dots. Either way, I think I'll stay out of the middle of Lake Michigan for now and forever. Next week, we hop into March and hop over the pond to Iceland, where a crime made headlines for the theft of a currency some people don't even think is real. Imaginary money, but real cocktails. So be sure to check the description box for the ingredients for next week's episode. I'll see you next week. And remember, there are always alternatives to theories that it's aliens, but why would you want those?